Hi guys, welcome back to the series. We are in Mark's Gospel, picking up this morning from Mark chapter 13. Now I've got to be honest, in the 13th chapter of Mark, there is a lot going on. There's a lot of teaching from Jesus, there's a lot of heavy moments here, and I'm going to do my best to bring a simple message of hope and encouragement to you guys. But we're picking up the story in verse 1 of Mark chapter 13. It says that as he was leaving the temple, that's Jesus, one of his disciples said to him, "Look, teacher, what massive stones, what magnificent buildings." He's talking about the temple of Jerusalem, which had been built several centuries earlier. And from more recent years, King Herod had been making additions to this temple that would continue even for many years to come. It was a massive project. And the disciples, like tourists, are kind of amazed at the size of the bricks, at the magnificence of the building. But Jesus says, "Do you see these great buildings? Not one stone here will be left on another. Everyone will be thrown down." And then Jesus and his disciples, they leave Jerusalem and then they go, it says that they were sitting on the Mount of Olives to the east of the city with a view of this temple. And as they're sitting there, Peter, James, John and Andrew come and ask him privately. They say, "Tell us, when will these things happen? And what will be the sign that they are about to happen?" So Jesus has just predicted the destruction of the temple, and in their Jewish minds, they are harking back to the destruction of the very first temple, which involved also nationwide exile and annihilation. And so in their minds, the destruction of the temple equals the destruction of their world, or in other words, the end of the world. And what Jesus begins to tell them is a mixture of what they can prepare for in terms of the destruction of the temple. The destruction of the temple was to take place in about 40 years' time. In AD 70, the Romans eventually destroyed that temple after several years of Jewish revolt, and quite literally not one stone was left on the other. Such was the total annihilation of the temple. This entire chapter has often been read by believers today with the view that this is all about the end of the age or the end of the world. But a lot of these early comments was really just preparing his disciples and the early church, the early readers of Mark's Gospel, with what was to come and how to prepare for that opposition. He talks about believers being handed over to the authorities, being flogged, being questioned, being put on trial. But in the midst of all these trials, Jesus brings words of comfort. He says things like this: "Do not worry about what you'll say when you're brought before the authorities, because the Holy Spirit will give you the right words to say." He says, even if there's betrayal in families, he who stands firm to the end will be saved. So for Jesus' disciples, for this first early community of believers who are reading Mark's Gospel, Jesus' words are clear. Don't worry. Be on your guard, but don't panic. Do not be full of fear, but trust in me. And we can take similar encouragement. No matter what is going on in the world around us, hear the words of Jesus. Do not be afraid. Trust in him. Lean into him and into his wisdom, because ultimately he will have the last word.